Welcome to the Opinion Show this week, where we gather with members of the editorial board of the Plain Dealer and the Northeast Ohio Media Group to talk about issues in the news and what our group of editorial writers feels about them. I'm Elizabeth Sullivan. I direct the editorial board, and I'm the opinion director for the Northeast Ohio Media Group. I'm joined today by Kevin O'Brien, noted columnist and deputy editorial page editor of the Plain Dealer, Ted Diadiun, editorial writer, as well as editorial writers Chris Evans and Pete Krause. And we're welcoming Ted for the first time to this show.
Happy to be here.
Glad you dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, well, that's how you get the memo.
Last week, a video of some fraternity boys, members of a fraternity, en route to a fraternity party from the University of Oklahoma went viral, in which they were shown essentially singing a racist chant with some very offensive lyrics in it, and the reaction was swift from the National Fraternity, which closed their chapter, and the University of Oklahoma, after looking into it for a couple of days, decided to expel the two individuals who were most prominently seen on the video. We editorialized today that this case raised constitutional issues, First Amendment protections, and disputed the university's decision to expel the two boys, the two young men. However, there was a very vigorous debate on the editorial board about this issue, and so we're going to hash it out here for all of you, because I think that there are some interesting issues to talk about regarding the extent to which a university should be able to impose its own consideration about the atmosphere on campus, as opposed to, strict interpretation of First Amendment rights. So, Ted, why don't you lay out what you think are the main issues here for us?
Well, I think first and foremost, the First Amendment is a very important issue in all of our lives, and you don't check your First Amendment rights at the door when you attend a university or a college. I think it's very appropriate that the national fraternity closed the Oklahoma chapter and suspended, I guess, temporarily and perhaps permanently all the members of the Oklahoma group, the SAE. I have no issue with the president of the university booting the fraternity off campus and ordering the house closed. But where I do have an issue is where he expelled the two students who are identifiable in the video. I think a university is supposedly a bastion of free speech and a vigorous exercise of the marketplace of ideas, and it's clear from the video that these people weren't exchanging well thought out ideas. I don't think anybody here would dispute the fact that the words in the song were vile, and there's no excuse for them at all. But I think in terms of giving the students an opportunity to express themselves, I think it's a First Amendment issue, and I don't think they should have been expelled. And actually, I'd go farther than the editorial did and hang it not only on the First Amendment rights, but on the atmosphere that ought to take place in a college or university. I'm concerned that there are a lot of instances recently where people are brought before boards and scolded.
Well, let's not get too far into those details, but before we leave this issue, or as we explore it, Chris, you were nodding your head over First Amendment rights, but if it's all about First Amendment, why was the university within its rights to close the fraternity down if they were just exercising First Amendment rights?
I don't know that I agree with Ted on that. I mean, to me, the First Amendment right is an absolute right. And as vile and offensive as this song was, as Ted pointed out, I mean, a university is a place of free speech and free thought. And that doesn't mean that we agree with it, but those ideas need to be aired. And I think those students should be held accountable among their peers for that song. And by expelling the kids and suspending or kicking the fraternity off campus, I mean, that's a coward's way out. And I think that they shouldn't have done that.
So
I think
you don't think they should have done anything?
No.
Okay. Kevin, what do you think are the limits here when there's a free speech issue like this? I mean, the words themselves talked about hanging people from a tree, and Oklahoma is one of those states that has a history of lynchings of blacks and whites, but still, you know, that in particular caught people's attention. And, you know, a lot of, I mean, a recruit to the university canceled, a performer canceled because they felt that simply the fact that there were students who felt that way and celebrated that way was indicative of an environment on campus.
Well, that student will be disappointed wherever he goes because you're going to run into idiots no matter where you wind up. So, there are going to be people who sing, stupid songs wherever you go. That's kind of the age and the atmosphere. As far as the First Amendment, what case law based on the First Amendment says is if you want to imply that speech is threatening, you have to come up with a pretty direct, pretty credible threat to specific people or a person or people. And this song, I can't imagine that the people who were singing it had authored it, so it wasn't necessarily expressing deep-seated sentiments that they had or anything like that. They were just parroting some silly words that were offensive, and there was no credible or direct threat to anybody involved in that. So it certainly doesn't rise to the level of suspending the First Amendment in this case.
So Pete, you commented on our editorial this morning that suggesting it was better to have let these two students stay on campus so that they could address their issues and talk to other people about it, maybe be educated by others. And you seem to feel that their expressed contrition was also significant. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, both of these students were, I believe they were freshmen. They were both from Dallas. Yeah, I don't think these students should have been expelled. To the degree that this was First Amendment, I think it was protected speech, but I would disagree. I don't think it's speech that needs to be aired. This didn't have to be aired, but it could be aired. I also think that, as Kevin said, these kids, there was kind of this group behavior going on. They were apparently taught this song. There was drinking. That's no excuse for what they did, but at the same time, I don't think that there was any kind of serious threat. It was idiotic, it was juvenile, and it was racist. And I think that by having to walk the paths of their campus and face their fellow students, black and white, head on, and face the music, I think it is the best punishment for them. You expel them, and then basically I think you inhibit the learning process to a certain degree that needs to go on here. And people talk about, you mentioned the apologies. Yeah, when people get caught, they tend to apologize, and what does it really mean? I did read the apologies. They came from not just the kids, but in one case, the families. It was interesting. They weren't making excuses. I think they definitely sensed that, wow, this was a real bad mistake.
So you're very focused on these two individuals, yet you mentioned that this was a learned song. This was sort of something that
yeah,
the
and that's a problem.
Which, right, it says that there is, and this is what, the two individuals who, opted out of going to that campus for two different reasons, for two different occasions, cited was that it seemed to be indicative of an atmosphere. And this is why the letter from the president of the university expelling them also cited that he wanted to make sure that he was preserving, an atmosphere on campus where people would not be intimidated because of their race, creed, or other reasons. And when there's, sort of a reservoir of attitudes like this, that breeds it. Now, even with the idea that the First Amendment has to trump all, don't you think that universities have an obligation to create that kind of environment, Ted?
Sure, yeah, I do, and that's why I said that I thought the president was within his rights to close down the fraternity house. I mean, there were some people on the comment area this morning who mentioned the student handbook and things that are set out there. And that goes right to the ability of a group to have a house on campus and to enjoy the advantages of being part of campus life. And if they overstep that, I don't have a problem with the president telling them to hit the road. But that the student handbook doesn't trump the First Amendment, and I think, with kids, you go to college to be educated. Part of that is you say stupid things, and you have the right to be stupid, and other people have the right to tell you that you're being stupid, and I think this whole thing is probably a very shocking learning experience for everybody, not just at Oklahoma, but across the country.
I don't think by expelling these kids or kicking the fraternity off campus, you have dealt with this problem. I think the university president has every right under the First Amendment to get up and admonish those kids,
Sure.
and to point out that this does not represent the atmosphere on campus, that the campus is diverse and inclusive. But to me, this is just a knee-jerk reaction, and you're kicking the fraternity off campus and you're kicking these kids out. You're not solving a problem, and in a way, you're kind of inhibiting conversation where they could have used this as I hate this word, but kind of a teaching moment where, as Pete I think pointed out, have these kids walk the campus and have other students confront them about this song and.
Although some of the commenters, when Pete suggested that, said, to have them get beat up. I mean, it's sort of an invitation to violence.
I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, one note, and I didn't read too deeply into this, but I saw where I think it was some of the Oklahoma football players, including one African-American player who publicly accepted their apologies. I think there is this, just as Chris said, it's a teaching moment. It is a moment for, and it could get a little, and it should get uncomfortable.
Sure, right.
That's part of the point. And the idea that they might get beat up, I don't think so. I mean, people exaggerate on these
Well, if they did, then the people who beat them up will have gone too far, and they need to be kicked off campus. Now you've got a problem. Okay? With speech, you don't have a problem. With violence, you have a problem.
Well, and that is one of the key points of disagreement within our editorial board, as you know, all of you who are sitting here, that there were some of us who felt that this chant was more than simply benign or not threatening, that in fact it did constitute a real threat, because once you start, justifying discrimination through the metaphor of lynchings, I think that is more than, I personally think that is more than just something, that goofy kids do. And also if you look at the, legal history on this, there are not a lot of cases that the Supreme Court has not really defined where they see the limits on this. So why do we think that it's not, something that's so beyond the pale?
I don't think any of us feel that it's a benign song. I mean, it's a terrible song, and the lyrics are incredibly offensive. But again, it's protected speech, as Kevin pointed out. I mean, it does not contain a direct threat. It doesn't incite to violence. It's a bunch of college kids, being college kids.
So what if these same lyrics were being recited by somebody other than a goofy college kid? I guess that
could be a different situation, depending on the setting, depending on the status of the person saying it.
And the level of the threat, whether it's an individual threat or
they got some rope in their hand and they're pointing to a tree.
I think it's important to to note though that The point is that obviously there's a certain number of students there who think this kind of thing is okay, or it wouldn't have happened. And it did happen. It appropriately was spread around the campus to the point where the football team called off practice, made a statement under the leadership of the coach. There were a lot of strong statements made, and all this came out. You know, I mean, I don't want to say that necessarily that this was good, but, you know, I mean the song itself, but in an odd way, it expanded the conversation, and it certainly slapped me in the face with the idea that anybody would even do that. You know,
Well,
just stunning.
Go ahead. I was just going to say is that if you opened up
We're gonna have to-
everybody's mind and everybody's private conversations or to all of the crazy things and racist things maybe that are thought and said, I think we'd all be shocked. But be that as it may, you know, mistakes can be made and they should be learned from.
Did
Let
you
me
want
say
to
one
have the
last
word?
thing. In an educational institution, the way to handle this would have been to take those students and challenge them to defend the lyrics in the song. Defend your argument. Because you're making a statement here. This reflects who you are. Is this really who you are? Defend this.
Stand up.
They couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
This is actually what the ACLU suggests in this situation. Anyway, thank you all for participating. We would like to hear from you definitely in the comments on this. Did you agree with our editorial? If you haven't read it today, please do so. Let us know what you think, and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you.